Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. The question I'm asking today, can you really go to prison for non-payment of council tax? Are you going to be one of those poor saps behind the bars with porridge coming to you? Norman Stanley Fletcher, you have been found guilty. That's for the old people out there who remember the TV series. On the line is Gavin from Sovereign Empowerment, who's going to take me through this and see whether, if I don't pay the council tax this April, I may be residing behind bars and doing the show from there. Hello, Gavin.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. This is
What
an
a lovely
interest.
intro.
Oh, thank you very much. But it's something that people do worry about, and in fact, there is a video out that came out fairly recently from some other legal people, shall we say, who were debating whether you went to prison or to jail for whether it's a criminal matter or a civil matter, and it struck me that it didn't really matter what semantics they use. If you're being held against your will, it's still uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. You're behind bars, you're behind bars. Who cares whether we're calling
Exactly.
it prison or jail?
Yeah, and
Um,
it's not the kind of bar I like to be behind.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I guess, to start this off, the question, can you really
Mm.
go to jail?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is yes. And you might think, well,
Oh,
hang on a minute, what's going on here, right? We
yeah.
can then, this is over. Um,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like I'm going to refer to that judgment, that recent judgment that Mr. Layton was successful with Bristow and Suter, because the
He's so
same.
famous now, isn't he?
I mean, I've never met the man. I don't know who he is, but there's so many great people doing these things now, and this is what it's all about. Because that
Yeah.
one judgment has aided everybody in doing what we're doing, right? And the reason I'm bringing that up is that it's the principles as to what got the win there that apply here. Because in short, he won because a third party cannot evidence their authority to act, and the same
Right.
principle applies in this situation. So you can go to jail, but let's just kind of understand that. Now, I'm not saying that anybody does it this way, but if you were to be summoned to a hearing, a committal hearing, and you went to that hearing, you're likely going to be a judge. And I'm saying all this stuff very loosely because I'll
Hmm.
provide some evidence to show you that that's not really happening. You would be a judge and you would go to jail, right? You would be in the jail in the magistrate's court. But it could be argued that you, in your ignorance, maybe, have just voluntarily walked yourself into that very situation. So the
Right.
answer would be yes. But then if you decided for whatever reason that you weren't attending the hearing, what happens then? Because a
Mm.
warrant for commitment would have to be issued, and then the police would have to come and arrest you, and that would be it, and it's game over. And at that point, what I'd like to do is a screen share, because
Hmm.
I think we need to set the scene here a little bit and just give some people a little bit of clarity in that. Well, if it's the police, what warrants are these guys actually? What authority do they have? What warrants can they actually serve? So
Mm.
I think I've got permission to screen share, haven't I?
You have. You should have.
Just get this up here. So I've just knocked up a very simple slide here. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list of warrants, but these are, I would suggest, the most common ones. And the most common are going to be an arrest warrant, obviously, and a search warrant. Lots of people get into get into a pickle where these things are served on them, and that's that. So
Yeah.
you've got an arrest warrant and a search warrant. You've got a bench warrant, which is issued by a court when an individual fails to appear as required, for instance, for a court hearing. So the warrant would authorize the police to arrest and bring that person to the court. And then we've got the warrant that we're talking about, the warrant for committal. Um, and again, you think, well, crikey, these guys can actually do this stuff. But the problem that we've got in our situation with council tax is that these warrants cannot be issued because the legal forms, much the same as with the liability orders, do not exist and haven't existed since 2003. So you
Mm.
understand the issue where a third party would come into play. In this case, it would be the police. They haven't got the authority to do anything because the proof of that authority doesn't exist. So
Right.
you start to see where this thing starts to fall apart,
Fall
really.
apart, doesn't it?
Yeah. So let me stop that screen share. I'm going to share something else. Now, what I like to do is just walk people through legislation.
Mm.
What are they using? Um, and this again is part of how they do things because we've all had a. I was about to say these days we've all been in our legal wrangles, And we see how they play the game, and they like to, quote the legislation, and you read the words, and you think, well, that's screwed. This is pretty watertight as far as I can see.
Mm.
And that's how they do it. The procedures leading up to it, you can't really argue that. But again, it's what happens once it's done. That's where they lose, and they can't really do this stuff. So this is PACE. This is, let me just show you, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. This is section 17, and this really just confirms the types of warrants that the police can issue. And you can see here a warrant of commitment issued under section 76 of the Magistrates Court Act. So they have this authority to do this. If we go to the Magistrate Court Act and that specific section, again, you can read this and you think, well, this is it. We're bang to rights, Let me just get to the bit here. So they can issue a warrant of control. Actually, this is a very good point with regards to the enforcement agents. This is why they can't. Any one of you guys and girls that have ever been provided with a warrant of control or an alleged warrant of control by an enforcement agent know that it's fake, because they can't get one for the simple fact that the liability orders do not exist. There's no judgment. Nothing's been adjudged. This thing here, it says where default is made in paying a sum adjudged.
Right.
Now, I think I've just shown this before, and let me just try and find the right section. Council Tax Administration and Enforcement Regulations, as pertains to liability orders. And I'm just going to, now this has been changed. They like to change the things that aren't quite convenient for them. But the simple fact is that this is still true. And I think I've shown this to you before. The sum adjudged, okay, the amount in respect of which the liability order is made enforceable is not to be treated as a sum adjudged to be paid by order of the court.
Which is a weird statement, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because it begs the question: what is it then? What's happening in this so-called hearing? But this is saying where default is made in paying the sum adjudged. But we're just showing under the regulations that the sum is not adjudged, even though that's old. I've got to stress it. It doesn't change the fact that it's still true.
Right.
So we can see that things aren't adding up already, right? Or they can issue a warrant committing the defaulter to prison. A warrant of commitment may be issued, blah, blah, blah. So you read this, you think, right, that's it. But here's the problem. No, that's not the problem. This is the problem. This is a statutory instrument, 2003, as pertains to council tax. And you can see when you read this, the forms for liability order and warrant of commitment were both discontinued at the same time. And these words were omitted. So essentially, the legal form and any warrant or court order must come on correct legal form. And the reason for that is so that we and they all know this is all above board. You've been properly adjudged in a court of law, and here's the authority of which they can act. Okay,
Yes.
you need that judgment. This is confirming that it doesn't exist. So, with exactly the same reason that Mr. Layton won that case, or one of the causes of action, I say, he didn't win on all of them. I think there were 4. He failed on 3, but 1 on the main one there. The same applies here. No third party can actually issue that, serve that warrant, which means that the police do not get involved in this matter at all, because that would be a very big can of worms for them to deal with if they did that. So who is actually issuing the warrants? I've heard, I should say, that it's the bailiffs, the enforcement agents that do this. Okay, so let me just get rid of this screen share so I can talk to you properly. And that's what they're doing. So if for whatever reason you couldn't make it to the hearing and you were adjudged in the hearing, then they're going to issue this warrant of commitment. But because it's not a real warrant of commitment, the police can't really get involved in that situation. We understand the problem that would cause them, right? Especially if we wanted to go and do something about that. However, the enforcement agents then get involved. And again, it's all about ignorance. Now, I can tell you some stories with this one.
I bet.
One of them I'll say I heard about was where a guy opened the door and the enforcement agents were there to make the arrest. And all he did was phone the local police station and ask them on loudspeaker with them there, was there a warrant out for his arrest? And obviously the answer was no. And they soon scarpered, right? They literally, before the call had ended, had gone. So there's the first one. I know another lady, and if you're watching this, by the way, I am going to get back to you. She did message me again the other day, where they turned up, all their black vests and everything, no signals of anything. And I kid you not, in a black van. And
And this is what, the enforcement or the police?
the enforcement agents did
Yeah,
this,
came
and
all in black.
they called her to get her outside of her property to come and talk to them. And then they basically said, "We're here to arrest you and take you to the magistrate's court." And she obviously went. Now, that was because she didn't really know what was going on and was
Yes,
scared, obviously very
yes.
scared about the situation. But that's essentially kidnap.
Mm.
That's exactly what happened in that
Because they
situation.
have no authority to do that, and so they
None.
are kidnapping a woman under complete false jurisdiction,
Absolutely.
fraudulently.
And you might be watching this thinking that's not true. This stuff
Mm.
happens. This is going on. You know, the amount of people that have been wrong with this scenario. Um, so that's going on. So my point of this is that if for whatever reason you weren't to attend the hearing, they then have a problem in actually getting you arrested and doing anything about it. In fact, the whole thing would tend to fall away at that point, especially now you know that the enforcement agents are the ones that do it and they have no powers of arrest. They have no more power of arrest than you or I. That's the truth. So it would be kidnap. I mean, you can
Yes.
get into all sorts of different problems if you wanted to go back and get them for it. What I'd like to just quickly do is share a summons for commitment.
Mm, too.
And you can just show that these, I mean, look at this. Does that even look legit?
So yeah, show me the top because oh yeah, there we go. You've got the little crown on there. Can't quite see it on my screen, but it at the above,
So we've
and
got
then
that. This is the
yeah,
court, and then obviously the usual stuff here. There is no case number. Obviously, lovely capital red, bold red writing for scare tactics.
yes,
But the main thing here is that there is no name or a signature. And admittedly, that doesn't need to be a wet ink signature anymore. But no name of anybody here that applied their mind to the matter so as to grant the summons.
right. Now,
It's fake.
a friend of mine has got a similar one, and let me ask you this question.
Let's get that back.
It says on this summons, on a certain date to appear in court, that if you decide to turn up, you need to contact the council to make sure you've got an appointment. And I thought, but the summons is the appointment.
Yeah.
So, but then my mind went, hang on, why would you contact the claimant to see if you could turn up at court? I mean, if he was a murderer and he says, "Oh, you've got to contact me before you can go to court, defend yourself," I mean, it would be nonsense. But that seemed to be what was happening in that case. Well, you can't just turn up at court. You've got to check with us that you've got an appointment. Well, it's a bloody summons. Of course, I've got an appointment. Or is it a summons?
There's the
And
question, right? It
right,
actually it's more of an invoice. I've been spending a bit of time with a good friend now, a guy called Simon. We're going to do a video on this. We've picked it apart from the right at the beginning, the alleged bill, right the way through. The summons is an invoice because this is a commerce game. That's all it's
mm,
about. It's commerce. I mean, people watching this might know that it used to be that you would get a summons if you're a couple living in a property, your private home, I should say, not the commercial entity they like to badge as. It used to be one summons for two, right? The couple, but now they're splitting them. So you have two separate summonses for the same amount. So two people now going to court. But the only reason they're doing that is they get more money out of it.
right.
They get a double whammy. They're double dipping. They get paid for all of this stuff.
Mm.
Now I'll put
That's
that
outrageous, though, isn't it? That's outrageous to send two summons, basically two
allegedly, I should say,
invoices.
guys.
Yes,
Allegedly, maybe
allegedly,
not.
yes, of course. Yeah, maybe it's all a load of nonsense. But if you've got two invoices from McDonald's or any other reputable burger place that has highly processed food, you'd go, hang on a minute, have I got to pay this twice? Oh, one's to you, wifey, and one's to me, husbandy. I mean, it's a nonsense.
The whole thing's a nonsense. And I think, we've been doing this for some time now.
Mm.
A lot of people are waking up, and you've got those people that argue the legal facts. But I think we're understanding that procedurally, the whole thing stinks. It's completely unlawful, and it's quite easy to prove these things. And actually, it's interesting when you challenge with facts how they try and come back. And what they tend to do is they conveniently ignore the facts that don't work for the narrative they want to push, and then
Mm.
they bring you back into their box with their narrative and their rules, and this is why this is it, and this is why it's all okay. So it
Yes.
shows you that they're struggling now to even rebut the things that we're pointing out as true. and they definitely don't like getting into the argument about the summons or the validity of the summons, I should say.
Yes.
So that really is why you need to make it personal, and it's about the liability of the individual doing it, because they can just hide behind their procedures. And a lot of people have got this experience now. You just get led around from pillar to post and in circles, and you chase your tail, spending a lot of time arguing with people that don't care, and where you're not going to get anywhere with it.
Mm.
So it's more a case now of understand the procedures as they're following it, but also go back in time, understand how the law is meant to be, understand what due process is meant to be. I think it was your good self actually that introduced me to the observance of the due process of law from 1368.
Could have been. I've read people send me. I mean, don't look at me like I'm any expert. People send me stuff, and I think, wow, this has got to be shared. And so, I share the stuff. So maybe that is the case. The trouble is, I can often forget, and that's why having you on the show gives me some sense that we're in the right area.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you know the stuff you've got on the back, on the, I can't see it in the frame, but I can see Black Law's dictionary and all the big textbooks that you've got that you've studied.
Oh, at the back there. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's
absolutely.
so I think what I want to sort of get across to people is don't fight your liability, because you're not going to win that game. They've got that sewn up. But
Mm,
look at the procedures that they're following, because they're full of holes, and that's where you can get them.
mm.
The summonses are generally not. I mean, well, I will say this: they are tending to put names on these summonses now that I'm seeing. If enough people challenge certain things in certain ways, they tend to shut down those options.
So
Um,
I've seen summonses. These no, I've seen liability orders in which it's been signed by the justice of the peace or someone from the court, but there is no liability order. So there's this fake bit of paper that the council have put together, signed by a justice of peace, which means the justice of peace is signing outside his judiciary function, which means that he's liable. He is liable. He's just made himself and he may not know that, personally liable. That if this is illegal now by their own legislation, that this could potentially be a criminal offence.
yeah. Now I've seen very similar so-called liability orders. Now, the other thing to consider here is it's never a court that will give you that, because they know they don't exist and they can't do that.
Right? They
It's the
can't.
council that would have provided you the so-called liability order with the so-called signature of the justice of the peace. The question I would ask is, has the court had anything to do with that in the first place?
Yes.
Because often those signatures are ineligible. You cannot make out what that is, and there's no
Yeah. Who
name,
is
or if
it?
it is, you can't make out the name either. So we know there's an intent behind what they're trying to do. The other problem they've got now is, I think, again, this is something that you've shared publicly with people, is the Ministry of Justice have confirmed specifically that liability orders are not court orders. So the question where people have got council issued liability orders where they've signed them and everything else is, well, how can they be?
Mm.
They can't be. We've got proof from higher up confirming they're not. So now you've got causes of action here, because what is really going on? So if I had a so-called order from the council, I would be actually contacting the court to have them to confirm that they issued that order very specifically. Now that
Yes.
now you're causing them problems, because somebody's got to come in and say yes or no.
Yes.
Right now, what
Absolutely.
they tend to do is ignore that question. But now
Mm.
you've got a different problem for them, or they have a different problem, because they're ignoring that question. They have a judicial obligation to us.
Yes.
They,
So
they,
if they've ignored that question that you've asked them, is this from the court, and they don't want to answer it, and then this hearing happens, and you get whatever you get, and you can say, well, hold on a second. I've already asked you if this was from the court. You didn't reply, and so how can I suddenly have been supposed to appear at court if you didn't actually send me a court summons?
well, that's exactly it. So if you're in a situation like that, then the first course of action would be a complaint to HMCTS.
And
On
who are they?
so they basically are the court system. They're the agents of court are managed by HMC. They work for HMCTS. Then above them is the MOJ, who manage
Right.
them,
I mean, yeah.
and then they all manage all of the court buildings as well. And they've got the overarching authority for procedures, judicial procedures. So you've got to kind of follow the steps. But again, the point would be this: if you were making a complaint or making an inquiry like that to the court, somebody in that court ultimately has to be responsible or liable for what is going on.
Mm.
So back to the point, if you understand procedure, understand what's really going on, they break it all the time because this thing's full of holes and they'll try and double down. I always say this to folks that when you get a liar, we've all encountered liars in our life. They have two options when they're caught. They're either going to go, you got me, and admit everything.
Yeah.
But in our case, this never happens, or they double down, and that's what mostly happens. So you're kind of you're getting into this on the understanding that you almost predicting what they're going to do. You always understand your road forward because you know they're not going to go. You know what? Yeah, it's a fake
they're
order.
not going to put that.
We
It's a
shouldn't
fair
have done
cop.
it. We've done it ourselves. You know, they're not
Yeah.
going to do that.
No.
But when you understand what they've done, you've got leverage then to go against them. So just in that situation, if you have something you think has come from the council and not the court, go back to the court because they're the weak link. And ultimately, you get into a situation where people are going to start throwing other people under the bus because no one wants to be held liable for the things that are going on. So your gambit is always push forward and always escalate. And at some point, this hits a dead end for them, and then you get some remedy.
Fascinating stuff.
And a lot of that you can do without court. This is because these are major procedural errors that are coming into play. And the big thing is it's the people that are doing it. Often the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. Often the people following the procedures are clueless because, again, how many of you guys watching this now have actually contacted the court, whether on the phone or in person, where they said, oh, nothing to do with us, you need to speak to the council.
Yeah.
It kind of tells you everything, doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
Back to your point, since when is the claimant the one you should be speaking to in any situation like this, if there's any sort of wrongdoing procedurally?
Exactly.
So it just shows you. But then when they say speak to the claimant, you've now got leverage to go back to those court agents because they shouldn't be saying that. And what's starting to appear here is an absolute abuse of process.
So this is going to be very interesting because people will perhaps, if they've got 10 months of payment for the last council tax, will be doing their last payment in January. Then you get a couple of months off. And then in April, on the 1st, of course, we get this comedy bill and the whole routine all over again, which I think is going to be very interesting this year because there has been over the last, since I've been doing this sort of talk, we've been talking about the council tax and it's been showing the holes, and you've been on and other people have been on and other people have got videos on exactly the same thing. The awareness factor that this is a whole nonsense. And it isn't as if people, I think, don't want to contribute to their community. That's not really the issue. No one's saying, you should, everything should be free. It's just, we would like a fair system.
That's exactly it.
You get no choice in how much you've got to pay. You can't choose the services. You can't do anything about the sodding council anyway. And then you just get this bill that somebody else has worked out, who happens to be a corporation, and the whole thing is so wrong. And that's what my position is, just simply look. If you gave us a fair system, you probably wouldn't have all these blooming headaches to start with.
100% correct. That's exactly it. I mean, everyone I speak to, myself included, I would have no issue at all in making a fair payment if it was genuinely going to services that positively affect the community, and that we had a way of communicating where we were listened to and these things happen. But they're meant to be there to represent the will of the people, and we obviously know that is not the case. It is not how it works. And if anybody's challenged this in any way, you'll know when they come back, it ultimately concludes with Local Government Finance Act. You've got no choice. Pay up.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And then you think, well, hang on a minute. I thought slavery was abolished. I'm not a slave here. How can it be that I don't have a choice in this? There's another argument, and this is maybe another video, but it can be argued, and we are doing this right now with a certain strategy, that all legislation is actually misapplied to us.
Right.
This is actually something we got from the guys in America. They're way ahead of us in terms of how they litigate this stuff. They have got a few advantages, and they've got a very well codified constitution. We don't, on purpose. So it's a slightly different argument, but you've got the fact that they always use persons, right? If you go to the Council Tax, Local Government Finance Act, it's always through there. Any legislation that applies to us will have that word in there. Now I didn't find this, by the way. This is something that I've known for a while. And it was a lady called Simone of Empower the People that pointed this one out to me. But we've got the Interpretation Act from 1978 that specifically says that persons is interpreted as a body incorporated or unincorporated.
Right.
Now, by default, again, if anybody's argued with the council or any of these authorities, they will at some point confirm you are the legal person liable. Now, the legal person is the body incorporated.
Yes.
Which, as you and I sit here right now, we know that is not us. It can't be us. So you can have the argument that it's been misapplied to you because you are not a body incorporated. You are a natural person. Okay.
Yes.
Now, if the natural person is liable, it has to be explicitly expressed as that is the case. There's another argument to say even their version of the natural person is still not applicable to us because we're in a world of commerce, and these rules and regulations that they use are only applicable to them that use the commerce. It's not for us.
Yes.
But that's another story.
And
but
that goes down to contract law, doesn't it?
That goes down to contract law because, look, let's simplify it. It's just a system of commerce. That's what this is. So they have to make us the body incorporated because you can only contract with corporations. That's the rigged game. So I'll just say this right now. We've got a strategy going on where a friend of mine has defended and counterclaimed in a lower court. And the argument he's used factually is that the legislation has been misapplied to him, but equally that they can't use hearsay evidence in the hearing. Now, he lost it, and we were expecting that loss for two main reasons. One, the Bill of Rights can't be heard in a county court, apparently.
Oh, right.
Which is not true.
Right.
And that the court will accept hearsay evidence, which is like, whoa, okay, matter of record, but you're allowing hearsay evidence in.
Yeah, which could be anything.
And the reason they had to do that is he had it factually just sewn up. They could not get past anything that he'd done. Interpretation Act, all of that stuff was in there. And that's how they had to do it in the end. So the strategy now is to go for a quashing order. So this is the old school writ of certiorari, which they use in America, and they do it very well. And we're going to try the same thing here. So we'll go to the High Court with all of the facts, and we'll see if we can get a quashing order to quash that lower court judgment. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it's an interesting strategy because if a High Court then says that you can accept hearsay evidence and the Bill of Rights can't be heard in a court of law, I think we've got a bigger problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the rule of law is definitely gone at that point.
Well, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's like they're just making it up.
Making it up as they go along. What's it? And look, we know that.
So thank you for all of that. Before we go, let me ask, because it's the beginning of the year, what do you see happening this year in terms of things like the legal profession, the legislation rather, and things like that, and things like council tax and all of this sort of utility bills that people are pushing back on and all of that? Do you have any sense that this is going to just fall apart big time?
Yeah. And I think we all have that sense now, don't we? You know, we've all been in this for a while now, and we can all sense things are shifting in a positive direction for us. But I think, you know, if we take a step back, obviously I've done a video before about the bigger world stuff.
Yeah.
And that has to come into play with this because it's very relevant. So again, just my view, I see this as the end. This year is the end for them and the beginning for us. So there's a lot of stuff that's got to go down. Part of that's going to be the collapse of the system itself. And I've said this on a group chat with a few other people. I mean, that's where I really do focus a lot of my time on how that's collapsing, you know, and just if I can, just to bring this in to give some context. I always like context for what we say. We're at a point now where Saudi Arabia, UAE officially joined BRICS on the 1st of January. Now, there's more to this, but essentially the dollar's done. It is no longer used as a settlement currency for trade in oil, okay? And that's its purpose. It's the petrodollar. So this is no longer being settled. We're very close to a point in time where that thing is going to dump in value. And that then starts having a knock-on effect to all of the other fiat currency that's also worthless. So that affects the councils. Councils are going bust like we've never seen before, okay? The question we've got to ask is why? Now, the mainstream would actually say, oh, it's just mismanagement of funds. And that's clearly going to be a big part of it. But the other part of it is that they can't be funded anymore, right? Because that's what happens. They can print this stuff to oblivion.
Yes.
There are restrictions on this stuff. There's a reason this stuff's happening. So if a council can't be funded, it certainly can't be funded with a collapsing fiat currency, and they don't control the new system, how do they have a life going forward? How do they continue?
Mm.
There's a lot more being done behind the scenes that positively affect us. So bottom line for me, the collapse of the system is this year, and that's really the rug pull moment for all of it.
It's going to be an interesting year for sure, I think.
I'm excited. I just can't wait. I think it's brilliant. All the stuff that's playing out now. And then
well,
you've got the old client list of so and so coming out soon as well, which is going to be quite interesting.
Yes. So I mean, very rewarding for somebody like you who worked on this for a long time. You know, you're just seeing the wall continually crumble in front of you.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say validation is the right word. Just for me, it's that there's been a lot of time where you do self-doubt, you doubt yourself because there's not. It's not like you can just pull up the the URL that says right, that's correct and that's correct, and
yes,
you're trying to join these dots, and so for so long it's been a case of based on what I'm seeing and learning, this is the picture I'm seeing. But it's only now that we're getting the validation that it's right, it's correct, this is the way it's going. So yeah, I'm very excited because it's now playing out how I thought it would play out. But I've been wrong on dates. I've never got a bloody date right in my life.
Well, even if it's not this year and it's the beginning of next year or within the first 6 months, I mean, the graph is going in the right direction.
I think bottom line, it's over, and we can see that it's over. And this moment for us, I think, is just to keep pushing and doing what we've been doing, do our little bit, and I think the rest will be taken care of by other people that have a lot more power.
What I like is it's good to see now the smiles from people who've been warning people about the stuff that's been going on, where it's been all quite dark and grim, and they've had very long faces. But now you are seeing in a lot of truthers and freedom people that sense that actually that they're anticipating that it's all crumbling, and so seeing the smiles, like the smile on your face, is fantastic, because it gives so many other people that sense of people who don't understand it, but they're watching it, they're desperately trying to understand. It's just the fact that they're going, well, blimey, they're laughing about it. It's got to be good.
I think the other thing as well, Richard, is it gives people the courage now to do something, because they, a lot of people do look at other people and say, well, how are they faring with it? But I think we're at a point now where so many more are getting that courage to stand. And so we're at the tidal wave moment. This year's just going to get better and better as things get worse and worse for them.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Gavin, days.
It's good stuff. Your website, I'll put a link, of course, into the description. Sovereign Empowerment. Do check it out. And you've made a video which you kind of cover some of this stuff a bit more succinctly, perhaps without me interrupting you, on the site. And you're putting out the content all the time. And you've got some amazing content with your friend Darren. Is it Darren or Damien?
Damien, yeah.
Damien, yeah.
What is it they call him? Bricktop from Snatch.
So do check out those videos as well. It's all good stuff. But thank you for coming on and giving us all hope and explaining the procedure and how the wall is tumbling down. So it was all good fun. Anyway, that's my pleasure. I'll be back with more monologues and more guests, of course, so keep watching. But until the next time, from Gavin and I, thank you for watching and goodbye.